I don't want to say that I regret. The biggest regret about the mistakes I've made isn't making those mistakes. It's that I risk so much to gain so little. When I, get in a DUI, that's a big risk, and I paid for it. And the best thing that I could have hoped to gain from that night of drinking is not worth it. And you've got to consider, what means more to you.
Welcome to the Waste No Day podcast, a podcast specifically for and about the home services industry as it relates to plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and electrical. More than a podcast, Waste No Day is a credo, a determination, a mindset. It is a never-ending discipline. It is a refuse to lose pursuit. It is a wake-up call every morning to waste no day. Now here's your hosts, Brian Burton and Nate Minnick.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Waste in the Day podcast. Your hosts Nate and Brian are hanging out with you again, and we are excited to have a new show guest coming on the episodes with us today. Justin High will be joining us as a 3-time world champion in the art of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We are excited to talk to him about all the things that he has to offer, including discipline, the drive to motivate and win, and so much more. But before we do that, we're going to break it down for you and turn to Brian for our quote.
Grit, determination, the right amount of crazy, self-belief, everything it takes to be a champion. I have that. Dustin Poirier, former lightweight champion of the UFC.
Okay, all right.
Dude put a hurting on Conor McGregor a couple times. He beat him down with punches the first of the 2 matches that he won. And then got the rematch. And if you're not squeamish, go ahead and look up the video of the end of the most recent Dustin Poirier-Conor McGregor fight. Conor McGregor stepped back in his the leg, just went the other way.
I remember that. That was not pretty.
Yeah, so I think Conor lost in the worst way possible. It was just, it was gross. I started talking about his wife and stuff from the stage on his back. Like, oh my gosh, it was so bad. It was way worse than the loss, way worse. But even with that, what was it, his ankle or his leg? It was his leg.
Yeah, I mean, it was high ankle if it was anything.
Yeah, maybe. But he was losing anyway. It was about to be a repeat of the previous match. Yeah, it was pretty brutal. The loss was brutal. The leg was brutal. The performance afterwards, it's just
brutal.
It's bad stuff. Yeah.
And on that note, hey, this is an uplifting podcast.
But Dustin, man, he's a guy who you want to see win. He's a guy you want to see be a champion. Even when he loses, it's with grace and humility and gratitude. And when
Grit.
He wins, he does the exact same thing. Everything he has. Everything it takes to be a champion, to his quote, he does have, including our desire as an audience for him to be a champion. And I used a Dustin Poirier quote. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Our friend Justin coming on is a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So he's won worlds 3 times and pans 1 time as blue belt and purple belt, which at the 205 weight class is it's some pretty big dudes in that weight class.
Yeah, well, Justin is no small man himself.
Not at all.
Wait till we got to post this picture on the group.
Yeah, we'll put it in the Waste No Day Facebook group for sure. If you're not a member, find me on Facebook. We'll get you in there. Find Nate on Facebook. He'll get you in there. And we'll post a pic of him, but pic doesn't do it justice.
No, we should have gotten a picture of him standing next to us.
Yeah, I don't want to look that small. I already feel that small.
Would be
most
embarrassing.
of the time. You know what I mean? Yeah, he's 5-6 inches taller than me. I think I outweigh him right now, as he just recently had a tournament. He's probably around 215, and I'm I don't know, maybe 220. But he's a big guy. He's just, big dude. And more fit than me, which is probably faster than me. Every way, he was the first guy I rolled with. And anyway, we'll talk to Justin about all this stuff. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Well, I think, Brian, you brought up a good point with that quote, which is grit, right? I remember going to a global leadership summit and hearing one of the speakers talk about grit. It's something that leaders require. It's the ability to keep going even when things are just rough, difficult. You can't see your way through. It's the rough and tough piece of leadership that's just saying, like, you know what? Come hell or high water, we are making our way through this. We'll find a way. It's that determination, that intense drive to say that we are not done. We're not giving up. We're not quitting. We're not surrendering. We will accomplish the goal. And that is such a critical thing, not only to leadership, but to success in life, because there's always going to be somebody trying to knock you down. There's always going to be an obstacle put up in your way. And for many of us, there's going to be things in our own mind, recordings, those types of things that pop up in your head to say, you can't do it. You're not good enough. It's never going to work. Right? All that stuff.
Talking to me, or
starting to agree in terms of looking like our guest. Yes, I think I am talking to you.
I'm not growing 4 or 5 inches, that's for sure.
But that type of determination is required, because there's always going to be somebody either in your head or outside telling you you can't make it. Give up now. Find the easy way out. And so grit is such a needed thing in today's world.
In every day's world. Anybody who's really, it seems like these people are just born, and maybe there are a few, but it's so few and far between that it might not even be a real thing. Like if you read David Goggins' book, if you haven't, you should. But if you've read it, he might be the hardest guy that's ever lived. I mean, he's among them. What is he like? Hold Guinness records for all kinds of stuff, including the most pull-ups in 24 hours. Like that. Who wants to do a pull-up in 24 hours, much less the world record, He's, but he was, self-described. He was fat, lazy, low self-esteem, didn't care about anything, never won anything, never had a desire to. And one day he just said, enough's enough. And he pushes himself through all these things. Can't Hurt Me, I believe is the name of the book. It's been I think I listened to the audiobook when it first came out. Great read, super motivating and like practical stuff that you can use. But it's just, every time you read one of these books, you like, I don't know if it feels like there's a library in my head. No, probably not, because I'm not a big book guy. Audiobooks. So it's almost like these guys just become little coaches hiding in your mind somewhere. And every now and then you're going through something, and you can almost draw on a whisper from one of these people as a mentor of yours after having read their book. It's worked like that for me since 2004 when I started with Brian Tracy and Tom Hopkins. I'd be on a service call, like, man, do they need this, say, tankless water heater, A fan of them or not, when you have like a family of 7 and they're trying to survive with a 40-gallon power vent, natural gas water heater. That's a joke. We're a family of 6 that had a 50-gallon electric. That's almost laughable. You do a load of dishes and one person takes a 15-minute shower. You don't have any hot water for 40 minutes. It just is what it is. And having a tankless water heater versus one of those with a family that size, it is a no-brainer. It's almost mandatory. So I'd be, having a conversation with someone who could clearly afford it. No trouble there. But I was in the way. Like whatever I was saying or doing, I was the thing stopping it from happening. My poor amateur presentation skills. And I would reflect back on something I had read or something I saw in training, but something that someone else said. It was like a little coach Tom Hopkins was in my brain and goes, "Hey, Brian, remember this? Give this a shot." And I would throw it out there, and sometimes it would work, and that would give me just enough confidence to keep reading, baby. Let's keep going. Keep wasting no day.
Ooh, see what you did there.
But like Can't Hurt Me, the Goggins book, or Extreme Ownership, the Jocko Willing book, these are books, with everything that has to be dealt with today, and whatever your job or whatever your role is, or whatever you are at home or at work, these are people that are just so inspirational, and they give practical, actual steps that you can use to get better. It's really good stuff to have in your memory to draw on in those tough times.
It sure is, Brian. And I'm excited today to talk to Justin not only about his physical fitness and all the benefits that can come from that, but also just the intense grit that it takes to compete at his level, at the international level in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and not just compete, but to win. I mean, he's a world champion 3 times over. And so we'll have some great conversation with him about what it takes to do that. And then I think we'll do our best to translate that into the service world.
Yeah. And we get him, I feel like we get him nice and young. He's like early 30s, maybe 30, something like that. He's only won championships in like blue belt and purple belt, He's not even a brown belt yet.
I noticed that you're saying that while he's not here.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I don't think he wants to win the white belt championship in this conference room. It's a little beneath him.
That's right. What color belt's yours, Brian?
I'm wearing a black leather belt right now, as it were.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah. So, he strikes me as a guy who's going to take off and go somewhere.
He certainly strikes people.
No, he doesn't do any striking, actually. He gave up MMA. We did have a conversation about that he wasn't really as into MMA. And then, he's got a family now. So MMA is a tough one when you have kids. It's got to be, it's a big risk.
Right.
Versus jiu-jitsu, where there's still risks involved, but not like getting kicked in the head, that kind of risk. So not a whole lot of striking. But yeah, he's going to take off. He's going to go somewhere, and it's cool to have him on now before he starts winning, black belt world championships, and who knows what's to come.
Well, what is to come now is our interview with him, and so we are going to take this time to put Justin High in your passenger seat. Our guest today is Justin High. He is a 3-time world champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. From a young age, he became familiar with what it takes to overcome difficulties. In his 20s, he was the source of many of his own problems. But then as he became more serious about Jiu-Jitsu and realized that he had to be honest with himself and cut out the habits and choices that he knew would make him weaker, or the consequences would be his own neck. After winning his 3rd world championship, he started to see in each moment of his life that it is easier to see what is right versus what is wrong. And if you build a foundation of good choices, success will be the obvious outcome. With that, welcome to the show, Justin.
Hey, thanks for having me here.
Welcome to the show, finally, my friend. I think I asked you about doing this about a year ago, right? It was at that tournament where my daughter went to her first tournament.
His schedule was just that full.
He won. That was like Maryland or something.
Yeah, that was a small one. I know a couple months ago when you came into the gym, you were asking about if we could do something like this. So, yeah, I'm glad I could make it in.
Yeah, he won that tournament, as it were.
Yeah, I tapped the guy out in 10 seconds that day.
Woo. Did it hit 10? I was telling Nate earlier that I don't think it hit 10.
Yeah, no, it's pretty clean on the video. It's 10 seconds.
Wow. And it was like it was a guy who looked like he was going to win the tournament. That's what I was telling Nate. Like, this guy was, I don't know, he was Brazilian. He just looked the part of like he grew up in this. And I'm like, ooh, he looks pretty good to be going against one of our Gracie guys, He tapped him, like Justin and I were talking, and I was watching for a sec. My daughter calls me because she wanted this gi that was on sale behind me. I turned around and look at it. I turned back around. Justin's standing behind me. I was like, "Oh, what happened, bro? They cancel your?" He's like, "Nah, I tapped him." Like he wasn't even out of breath.
Yeah,
Wow.
I ran that move like I was drilling it. He just let me do what I was going to do, and there didn't give me very much resistance. So that's what happens.
Yeah, I rolled with Justin. He was the first person I ever rolled with when I got in finally. And it probably felt a lot like I was letting you do whatever you wanted to do. let me speak up for my man that lost in that tournament and tell you he was trying. If I can speak from personal experience.
Yeah. Well, Justin, it's good to have you with us. And we always like to learn a little bit about our guests, where you come from, kind of what's your story, and specifically, how did you get into the whole jiu-jitsu community? So why don't you kind of give us the nickel tour on your life and where you are now?
Okay. Yeah, I grew up in the country, not in Lancaster, but in Halifax. I don't know, it's a very small town.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, yep. Halifax, Pennsylvania. But there was like 80 people in my graduating class.
Okay.
I grew up on a farm, way out in the country. So I started wrestling really by middle school. I was really overweight at that time. My friends were like, "Hey, we need a fat guy for the wrestling team, and you're the perfect weight." I was about 250 pounds in 7th grade.
Okay.
So that got me into wrestling. I didn't win a single match my first year. Just went out there and got beat up every time. And then, my second year, I don't know what happened, but I was really serious about it. I stuck with it, and that's when I started winning. I went 21-3 my second year.
Whoa.
And then
Your second year?
my second year, I was 21-3.
Wow.
Then that was still like middle school wrestling. But then the varsity heavyweight, he was this really big guy. Everybody loved him. He was on the football team. He was well known in the community. He was at a job working while he was in high school and getting ready for his senior year in wrestling, and a tire, like he was mounting tires on trucks, and a tire exploded, and he didn't die, but he was not going to make the season that year.
Whoa.
And the coaches told me I could do one more year of middle school wrestling in 9th grade, or I could come up and do varsity because they need somebody for the varsity heavyweight position. And I was, I have some experience now. I'm the right weight. And I stepped up and I did it. I wasn't 21-3 that year, but I did win more than I lost. And I got a couple gold medals that year, different tournaments.
Wow. As a freshman, you were over 500 in varsity.
Yeah, I think I was like 16-7 or so, something like that. I mean, this is a long time ago. I don't quite remember, but it was something like that.
Yeah.
So that went well. I did it another year, and then I was in about 10th, 11th, going into 11th grade, and I started running with the wrong crowd in high school, that sort of thing. I tried to wrestle, but between 10th and 11th grade, I spent the summer kind of partying, not paying attention.
You were running with Nate's crowd, huh?
Yeah.
Not doing what I was supposed to be doing. And I actually lost like 70 pounds because by 10th grade, I was 275. Going into high school, I was still not eating right, not training right, but I was committed. But I was still gaining weight. It was getting a little bit out of control. Then I started partying and I ended up losing like 70 pounds just from running around all summer, going from here to here. I didn't have time to eat and all that stuff. I was just partying. I still tried to wrestle, and I was still doing good. I'll never forget, I was still 5-2. And the one day in the locker room, the coaches heard some rumors about me. They knew I was sneaking out before practice, smoking cigarettes in the graveyard before practice started. And they're like, "You're not committed to this anymore. Just get out of here." And I was still doing good. I still wanted to win, but I mean, yeah, they were right. I wasn't ready to do whatever I had to do anymore. By the time I was 21, I started getting back into MMA, where I started getting into MMA, started doing some little wrestling tournaments again. And then I found jiu-jitsu when I moved to Los Angeles, and I won my first jiu-jitsu tournament after training for, I think it was about a month or so. The coach out there in Los Angeles told me, "There's a tournament coming up, the South Bay Open in Los Angeles. You're going to do it." I went, did the tournament, won that. I was actually out drinking the night before that. I was in a barefoot street race with a Samoan guy outside a bar. And I ripped off the skin on my one of my toes. I ripped off all the skin on one of my toes because I was barefoot street racing drunk outside a bar. But the day of the tournament, I woke up, my wife's like, "You're doing this tournament, right?" And I was like, "I'm pretty hungover." And she's like, "Come on, you committed to doing this. You like doing this stuff. Go do the tournament." I went and did the tournament. I won my first tournament back in 2012. And at that point, my coach was like, "Okay, I'm not your coach anymore. Now I'm your manager. You have a MMA fight in November." This was like July. He's like, "You have an MMA fight in November." So I started training for that. I was getting really committed. The guys were actually like telling me like, this is what you need to be eating. This is the way you need to be training. Like start getting ready because you're going to be fighting somebody. And I was doing Muay Thai, kickboxing, Jiu-Jitsu. Like I was just getting ready, training 4 or 5 hours a day, living in Los Angeles. I was a bouncer at a club. My wife had a job at her place at a warehouse. Like everything was pretty stable, I guess. Like, I was working towards something. And then we found out we were having a baby. And we knew, like, before we even moved to Los Angeles, that we were going to have fun in Los Angeles, but we don't want to raise a family here. Now that time came, we found out we were having a baby. I told everybody, I'm going to cancel the fight. I got to go. I got to get home. This is not, like, we're having a baby and we're not going to do it here. So I left there and I put all the jiu-jitsu and MMA and stuff on hold for a couple years. Had the baby, found some new gyms around here, trained a little bit off and on. I think it was about 2017. I ran into Steve Blackman, local WWE guy, or I think it was WWE he used to do back in the day. I ran into him at a gym, and he told me about a gym that some guys were training kickboxing at. There was only about 4 or 5 guys, but I started training with them. Then they got me back into jiu-jitsu at a gym in Harrisburg. I started training with them, as well as the kickboxing. Wasn't sure what direction I was going to go with things, but I was kickboxing. I was doing jiu-jitsu. And then I won my first tournament back. So now I've won my first tournament in 2012, and then I did a tournament in 2018. I won that. I won the expert division at Anaga, so I got a belt for it. And then one day at practice in Harrisburg, they said I hit a guy. It was more of a sweep, not quite a hit, but the coach said that I was being too rough on people. I needed to think about what I did and not come to practice for a little while. And that's when I said, well, he told me, he's like, not everyone's here training to be a world champion. I said, well, where's that gym at? And then the guy who I was doing kickboxing with told me about the guys in Lancaster. So I started to come and train with them at the end of 2018. I won my next tournament.
That's Gracie 717.
Yeah, Gracie 717. I won my next tournament. I was doing well. I think I got my first loss somewhere in there, but things were still going pretty well. And then by 2020, when the pandemic hit, I was still training, wasn't sure what was going on because there wasn't even a lot of competitions happening at that time. And Damien said, let's go down to Worlds in Florida because I have friends down there. I like a trip to Florida. Like, let's see where you're at with things.
Damien is Damien Puopolo, who is the owner of Gracie 717, who is episode 42 of the Waste No Day podcast, if you want some backstory on him. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah. So,
he actually talked about you in that episode too, so that ties everything together.
Yeah, it was a fun trip. We had a good time down there. I remember, I'll never forget that day. The thing that was like the most serious competition that I've done, ever. It was World Championship down in Florida. It was like in a big arena and everything. It felt pretty serious. And I just remember when I was sitting in the bullpen, like the thing that was different this time was that I was really focused on what I was there to do. Like I wasn't playing on my phone. I didn't know who was next. I didn't know like what round I was in. I was just waiting for them to tell me to go fight somebody. Like I didn't know who it was going to be. Like Damien told me that I was in the finals. I had no idea. Like he's like, you're in the finals now. Like after I beat, a couple of guys or something, he's like, this is the finals. This is the World Championship finals. And the guy that I had to beat was this doctor he was a doctor. He was a wrestling coach for Stanford University. Like he was an all-American wrestler. Like he was well known in the community. And we were both, blue belts in jiu-jitsu, but he had an extensive wrestling history. And I went out there with that guy, and he knew how to move, but he couldn't escape anything. Like I kept him under control the whole time, and he just couldn't escape. He wasn't willing to take the big risks, and I pulled out a tight win over that guy. It was just a ref's decision. Like I didn't tap him out or anything like that. I didn't dominate him, but I kept him under control, and the ref, decided that I was the one who deserved to win that match. But it was tight. It was close. I never wanted to feel that feeling again. You know what I mean? Because that's hard to say. Like I'm the world champ. I won the world championship, but it's hard to, say that I really owned it.
Because a decision can really go either way.
Right. Like it was close. But the next world championship came around in 2021. It was no-gi worlds, and no-gi isn't even my preference. I love the gi. I love grabbing a hold of the gi.
Explain what no gi means.
No gi is basically like what you'd see in an MMA fight. Shorts maybe like a rash guard, maybe not rash guard, whatever.
Like a tight-fitting shirt.
You're not allowed to grab each other's clothes or anything like that. People get, it's more like wrestling, MMA, that sort of thing. And then gi is
still no striking though.
No striking. You can kind of get away with a couple of things if it looks like a sweep.
Or so you thought.
right back there in Harrisburg. Okay,
full circle. Yeah.
And then there's a couple little things that you can do, but no, you're not really supposed to just punch somebody in the face or anything like that. But you can use your forearm. So 2021 No Gi Worlds comes around. I decided to go down to that because Damien's taking a couple of guys, so I go down to No Gi Worlds, and I breeze through the preliminary rounds. I get to the finals, and it's a guy that actually beat me about 6 months before in Texas at another tournament, and I'm up against him in the finals at Worlds, at No Gi Worlds. So this guy I really wanted to take this guy out because he's 1-0 with me. I got him down. I jumped on top of him, and I grabbed a hold of his arm to armbar him, and he wasn't tapping to the armbar. I had it locked in the way it needed to be. He wasn't tapping to it. I hear Damien yelling. He's like, break it. Like he's over in the sidelines. He's just like, break it. So I'm like, okay. And I gave it everything I had, and the guy's like, okay, that's it. And he taps, and he's done. And now I've just won my second world championship, and this wasn't a decision. This guy's arm was about to break. I didn't break somebody's arm before, but I tore something in there. It sounded like 50 sheets of paper just being ripped. Not this guy, another person before. So I'm familiar with what can happen there if you actually finish the armbar. Because a lot of jiu-jitsu, we get each other in these submissions, and you don't finish it. And some people, I think most people would probably actually be pretty uncomfortable finishing an actual submission because you understand the kind of damage that you're going to do. And
even if not, just hearing the snap, crackle, pop is enough to put me off, certainly.
Most people don't intend to cause harm to another person, and it's actually like a little block to doing so. I think that's natural for anybody, is like you don't actually want to harm somebody. But at some point, like when you get to a certain level in this thing, you have to be ready to.
Because they're not going to tap.
Right, they're not going to tap. I've been in situations where I was in a submission-only fight that went on 45 minutes. Like we were in this fight for 45 minutes just going at it with each other. And the guy grabbed a hold of my ankle in a way that I knew was wrong. It was bad. It was not going to be good. But I've already been fighting for 45 minutes. I wasn't going to stop now. And he finished it. And my ankle popped. Like luckily, it wasn't my knee that blew out, because that can happen pretty bad too. But my ankle popped. I heard it pop. He let go of it when it popped, and technically, the match shouldn't have been over, but I was ready to accept that it was over at that point.
Did you tap the limp foot onto the mat? Or
I did not tap. So technically, it should not have been over. But like I said,
you were okay with it?
I sat back and I was just like, all right, yeah, it's over now, It was just a sprain, so I actually finished that tournament. But then when I drove home, the ankle was so swelled up. I could
Wait, what? He popped your ankle out and you finished the tournament.
I finished the tournament. It didn't start really swelling until the drive home, and then I was having trouble with the gas pedal a little bit coming back from Philly. But I learned my lesson with there, where I just
Damien couldn't drive that trip, huh?
No, he wasn't at that one. But my lesson with that was don't go to these tournaments alone. So I just went to one. I competed in Long Island, New York last week, and that was another submission-only no-gi one. And I told my one friend, I was like, hey, man, I'd like you to come with me. Like, I'll cover your costs for the tickets or anything. I'll drive. I'm just worried that if somebody tears my leg off up here, I'm not going to be able to drive home. So he came up with me, and that was nice. I lost that one.
You can give him a shout-out if you want.
Yeah, my buddy Jake Franks. We went to college together for exercise physiology. And, we love, like every week we're bouncing the ideas off each other. And, we graduated like 2014 and we're still bouncing ideas off each other all the time about, exercise, diet, all this sort of stuff. He actually worked for the Eagles for a little while. But now he is a lumberjack. So completely got out of the fitness industry, but he still, power lifts and does all that sort of stuff. But yeah, he came up with me. I lost that match. that was my first match that I could have actually won money for competing. It was a qualifier, so I had to beat 3 guys in New York, and then I had to fly down to Tampa and then beat like 4 more guys. But the winner gets $10,000. So that's kind of the realm that I'm looking to get into with this whole thing. And even though I lost my first one, just competing at that caliber, like with those level of athletes, seeing like exactly where I do stack up, it was a good experience, you know?
Yeah. And that went to, what was it? Double overtime?
Double overtime. Yeah.
Justin's never sent me a video of him winning anything, but sent me a video of him losing that fight. Like, okay. Yeah. But it was, it was intense. How long did that go total?
Well, that was, it wasn't unlimited time. So it was 10 minutes and then 2 2-minute overtime rounds.
Okay.
And then in the second overtime round, he finished me. He got to start. On the overtime, you get to start in somebody's back, you know, with your hooks in and you're ready to choke him. So he got the job done and I did not at that point. But like I said, it was good to just have that experience and know like what it's going to take to enter that realm, you know, of competition.
When's the next one?
I've been looking. I'm not sure what's next right now. There might be something in North Carolina in October that pays cash. Might be interested in doing that, but that's October. So I'm probably going to do something before that.
So, Justin, that brings us to modern day, and certainly appreciate hearing your story and I'm sure that's just a summary of all the experiences you've had. As you look back over your career in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and wrestling and all the things that have brought you into the current expertise that you are right now, three-time world champion as a blue belt and competing for more, what is it that drives that animal inside of you or whatever it is that like wants to get better, wants to keep going, wants to progress to the next level and see where you stack up, as you said?
This is something that I think about quite a bit. You know, after that last loss that I had, like 2 days afterwards, I ran a marathon just to, I thought I needed some time to think. I needed to,
Yeah, I've done that. How many times, Brian? I mean, I'll just go run a marathon. I need some time to think.
Yeah.
I'll go text a marathon.
So yeah, I ran a marathon last Monday and, I have a rule, you know, I don't wear headphones. I don't try to distract myself. You know, I make sure I go outside and just go listen to nature a little bit. And
That was a great time for a semi truck to go rolling past the conference room here, right? When he said enjoy nature. And I just thought about semi trucks.
But I find myself entertained by my own thoughts, you know, like I enjoy just kind of visualizing concepts and ideas, painting a picture and working through things. And I think about, not to get really into religion and all that sort of thing, but I think about the universe and what it all means and what it all is. And that kind of that is my motivation mainly, because the thing that I think is most valuable about religion is it makes you think about something outside of yourself, or it makes you think about something that is observing you and kind of judging you. So I'm not any particular religion, but I feel like the universe is aware of me. And it's judging my actions. It knows my most deep motivations. It knows why I chose to do what I was doing. It knows whatever I had to overcome in the moment that I was, you know, preparing for a thing. I'm having a little bit of trouble really explaining it, but I feel like if I try as hard as I can and I fail, the universe it's aware of the effort that I put into it. And
kind of like the parable of the talents. Nate can probably drum this up better than me, but where you're being judged for your effort, for not leaving anything on the table, whether you won or lost. The judgment is on how much you gave it.
Right. Well, okay. So, like one day I jumped on the rowing machine and I wanted to see if I could hold 1,200 calories for an hour straight, like 1,200 calorie rate on the rower for an hour straight.
So get 1,200 calories in an hour on a rowing machine.
Yeah, with no break at all. And a funny thing that happens when you start exercising at like a real high intensity is you start to think like, is this actually healthy? Like, is this dangerous? Or like, is this dangerous?
I'm 3 seconds in and I'm starting to convince myself it's dangerous.
Right, you're wondering, you're like,
cardio anyway.
Is my heart actually going to explode right now? Like, what could happen here? And like, I went to college for all this stuff. I learned about, exercise physiology, how the body works, how everything works. And I still get a little bit scared. I'm like, am I pushing it too far here? And I think that that's like it's like a funny thing that happens the way, like once you start getting like truly healthy, you're so used to being unhealthy that you wonder if it's actually unhealthy just to do something that you should be able to do anyway. You know what I mean? Like we're naturally supposed to be, a certain level of fit and athletic. That's just the natural state of humanity, just people. And once you start getting like the way that you should naturally be in the first place, you're not sure because you're so used to eating junk food and sitting around all the time and not being healthy. You know what I'm trying to say?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the sugar telling you to go eat it.
The sugar.
Somewhere.
Yeah. There's
So
when you eat sugar, your body starts to crave more sugar. And the cool thing is like when you stop eating sugar and all that, because I eat pretty much a carnivore diet. And when you switch over to that, your body starts to prefer that.
Oh, for sure. All of a sudden that like a ribeye becomes more enticing to you than chocolate cake with melted ice cream.
Absolutely. But what happens in those moments is you start trying to talk yourself out of it. You start getting legitimately worried about your health and your safety. And then also it hurts and you want to stop. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, I know that I feel like I'm being observed or judged. And if I quit now, then everything will be okay. But there's nothing to be proud of in that. There's nothing to be proud of about stopping, because things got tough or uncertain.
Because you're tired.
Because you're tired, or you're afraid for your health. But I don't think. I mean, I'm legitimately concerned sometimes, but that doesn't make very much sense, and it sounds like an excuse. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I heard it was Will Smith talking about. I don't know what it was, like one of these motivational little reels or clips or whatever, where he's saying, "I'm not afraid to die on a treadmill." And I'm like, what is he talking? Like, die on a treadmill? Like, why would you even think such a thing? Where can you be that's healthier, But then he talked about how rigorous his routine was. And this is preparing for the I Am Legend movie, which is arguably the best he's ever looked.
Yeah, he was jacked. He was jacked for that.
He was like scary jacked, big and jacked in that movie.
What was the Ali one? He was pretty jacked, but he had to stay lean too.
Yeah, he was a little skinnier in that movie.
For this, he was just big.
Yeah, it was like, how is he that big without an ounce of fat on his body? And he said it was because he would spend hours on the treadmill, not walking, like running.
Yeah.
And when he said, "I'm not afraid to die on the treadmill," I thought to myself, like, where's that even coming from? And then now you're saying you get to a certain level where you start actually wondering if you could do yourself damage here.
Well, the big thing that I did do something to overcome that, to get a handle on that. I got a Fitbit for Christmas, and so I wore the Fitbit, and that tells you about your recovery. Like, it tells you what your heart rate is and all that. My heart rate sometimes drops down to like 33 when I'm sleeping in the middle of the night.
It's got to about shake you awake.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's still okay though. 33, it's probably still okay. I looked into it. Lance Armstrong's dropped down to 31, and then there's one other guy who's dropped down to like 29. And I mean, these are the people who've tracked it. I'm sure throughout history there's been other people, but yeah. So I wore the Fitbit, and that gave me the confidence to make sure that everything was where it needed to be. My recovery was where it needed to be, and just as I had suspected, I was just trying to make excuses, and I was actually okay. So the Fitbit actually broke. They sent me a new one. After 3 months, it broke. They sent me a new one, absolutely free, no questions asked. They sent me a brand new one. And then after 3 more months, that one broke. So I guess I'm just done with those. And I
So
learned
shout out to Fitbit's customer service, not so much the product.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the first one I tried to wear while I was rolling, doing jiu-jitsu. And then it broke after that, and I realized, okay, yeah, I guess I can't wear it while I'm doing jiu-jitsu. But the second
Definitely
one,
wasn't when he was rolling with me.
I don't think it's breaking.
Put in very little work.
I think
day.
it's malfunctioning because it's like, wait a minute, this person's dead. Their heart's only beating twice.
The low end is too low and the high end is way too high for way too long.
This doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Battery's got to be messed up or something.
Well, Justin, speaking of physical fitness and like pressing the limits and going from, you said overweight to obviously running marathons just for the sheer joy of cleaning your head. Our technicians go through similar, body requirements, not of course to what you're doing, but like their day is filled with strenuous movements of their body. We've done entire podcasts about diets and encouraging people to get fit and those types of things. And, as somebody who was, you said, admittedly overweight in middle school to who you are now, I mean, there had to have been a mental change in your head as to like how you got there, right? I mean, you didn't just naturally gravitate to your 6'4" frame of physique over here. That was a process in your head, and the technicians in the field, they're often very busy. There's a lot going on. A lot of them have families. They're working long hours. How are they supposed to go through that same change and keep their body fit and healthy so that can preserve their career, as opposed to being overweight or straining their muscles in ways that, with awkward lifts and things like that could prevent something from happening, that could cause something to happen that would hinder their ability to actually do their job. What type of mental shift did you make in your head to say like, no, that's not who I'm going to be. I'm going to be different.
Yeah. I've definitely been called erratic in the past and not thoughtful. The biggest change was in jiu-jitsu. If you freak out and start flailing around, you're gonna get hurt. Jiu-jitsu, like a black belt in jiu-jitsu, will just lead you into trap after trap after trap because they know how you're going to respond to whatever they want to do to you. So jiu-jitsu, like the very beginning, the first year, you just get beat up, you get tapped out, you get choked out, you get your arms, bent, it hurts. But that teaches you to stay calm. That's the first thing that you need to do, is you need to learn to stay calm, look at the big picture, kind of back away from yourself for a minute and how you feel, and just look at like what's actually going on here. I know you may be tired, something might hurt, maybe you're hungry or whatever. The whole process of fighting teaches you how to be hungry when you've got to cut a couple pounds before a tournament. The first time that I cut weight, I ate 5 ice cubes over the course of 3 days because I needed to make weight. I needed to lose like 15 pounds in 3 days. I ate 5 ice cubes. I walked 22 miles on a treadmill and spent an hour in the sauna. That will test you.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Now that's not the way you should do it, but that's what I did the first time, and I've refined it and made it much, better since then. But the thing is, like I'm saying here, you need to be able to just take a step back from exactly like what's running through your mind right now, like what your body's telling you it wants you to do, and that's the first step. The second step is you need to have the biggest thing for me, the biggest thing that I've learned in the past couple years even, is a regimen, discipline, planning. You need to have a plan about what you're going to, what you want to achieve and how you're going to achieve it. And then you need to trust in that plan and stick to it.
So that plan that you're talking about there, I mean, even that might seem like a stretch for some people. Like, we might have listeners who are saying, I mean, that sounds good. I'd love to look like you, or I'd love to look half like you, right? I'm not even sure where to start. Like, where do I begin? I'm not ready to go compete in BJJ Worlds or anything like that, right? I'm just looking to maybe start somewhere simple. Where did you find that progression beginning for you?
Yeah, throughout my 20s, I'm 33 now. Throughout my 20s, there was never a week where I didn't go to the gym. Even if I was drinking too much or busy with this or that or whatever, I was still at the gym. As far as somebody starting, I mean, okay, you've got to make time. You've got to prioritize. Like I get up at 6 a.m. now. I've gotten up at 4 a.m. before when that was the way that my schedule looked. But, I have a wife, I have kids, I have a job, and I train. I'm busy, and I still get everything done that I need to do because I just sat down with a piece of paper one day and wrote it down. Like, okay, if I get up at 6 a.m., I can do 15 minutes of kettlebell swinging, a half an hour on the rower, and then another half an hour of yoga before I need to start getting ready, helping my wife get ready for work, getting the kids breakfast, getting them out the door wherever they're going, and then get myself to work. Like I said, I sat down with a piece of paper and I wrote it out in 15-minute increments, like throughout my whole, like what every single day needs to look like. And the more, basically, once you start doing that, you don't want to deviate from that because you see that it works. You see that you're getting what you want out of this. You see yourself progressing. And I think most people, I mean, I was never on like that sort of a plan before, but once I switched over to that, that's when I started actually accomplishing things and getting stuff done and, being proud of what I've done.
So along the way, I mean, every man's journey is different for sure. And rarely is there ever a case where it's just nothing but up. I'm sure you've had some setbacks in both your career, in your training, in your body, and all those types of things. I'm sure you've had some things to overcome. What has been the mental fortitude inside of you to say, well, I know this looks bad right now. I know this hurts right now. I know this seems like a major failure or the bridge has been burned or we have no way to get across. What has been the mental fortitude inside of you to say, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to find a new way or a different solution?
The best way that I can think of that is just recently, like I said, we just had, my wife and I just had our third daughter.
Congrats, man.
Thank you. Yeah, the daughter's healthy. She's great. She's actually the best kid yet. She sleeps through the night. She's only 3 months old. She sleeps straight through the night. She poops once a day, and she smiles the rest of the time. So
sounds like me.
She's been good, man. My wife has been dealing with a little bit of difficulty since the baby. Well, even before the baby came, she was having a little bit of a tough pregnancy, and it hasn't been easy since then. And the week before my last tournament, I had to take her to the hospital, the emergency room, a couple times. And the week before a fight, I'm sitting in the emergency room till 2 a.m. with my wife twice. That wasn't easy, and it made me. The thought had crossed my mind, like, do I pull out of this tournament? Like, this is the week that I'm supposed to be, everything's supposed to be absolutely tight, point, on point, everything. And here I am in the emergency room. And then I had a fever for a day or two. I figured I'd pick something up in the emergency room, and I was thinking, like, do I pull out of the fight? Like, I'm hungry because, like, I haven't eaten. I'm cutting this last couple pounds here, so I'm not getting to eat. I'm restricting myself, and I'm sick now. Like, it was like Wednesday, and I had a fever, and I'm like, am I even going to, what if I have a fever? Like, I can't go compete if I have a fever on Saturday. So in my mind, I heard there was a loud voice saying, like, saying, all right, cut the diet, like, go get something to eat, go, whatever, let that go, call off the tournament, take care of your wife. I took care of my wife. I made sure that I was there for her and everything she needed. But the other part of that was like, yeah, okay, you're not going to make the tournament. You don't need to make weight. Why don't you go have a bowl of cereal or get some ice cream or just something to make you feel better? And this other part of me, I can't entirely identify it, but it was like, that is just an excuse. You're just looking for a reason to not test yourself because this is going to be a very difficult test. You're just looking for a reason to not go test yourself and to, eat some ice cream or whatever. And, like, obviously that's not what you're supposed to do right now. Like, obviously that's not the right decision. That's the wrong decision. Like, it wouldn't be, there's nothing to be proud of by calling off a fight and eating ice cream. There's nothing to be proud of in that. So that's the voice, that got me through it.
So
yeah, buddy.
You mentioned the concept of making excuses, and I think that's really where it lies, because the excuse is always the easy path out. It's the one that says, "Oh, you can stop running now," or "Oh, you don't have to work a little bit harder," or "Yeah, I mean, that couch looks pretty inviting." The excuses is what haunts all of us, and some people seem to have a more disciplined ability to turn those away, call it what it is. No, that's an excuse, I'm not going to take it. While others seem to just more frequently give in. Do you feel like you were born with the ability to just naturally discipline yourself against those excuses, or has that been a trait or a tactic that you've picked up and learned over time and developed?
I know, I wouldn't say that I was born with it, but when I was a kid, there was a lot of difficulties. I got beat up a lot when I was a kid. That makes you learn something about, you can't just even if you curled up in a ball and just sat there, whatever, cried or whatever you want to do about it, like that's not going to make anything stop. That's not going to end this situation. So you've got to develop these methods for overcoming the difficulty. I
will say there's born with it. I don't think so. As somebody myself who went from someone who procrastinated everything and put everything off and didn't really do anything that was uncomfortable and was super lazy, to someone who, found at least a career-wise ladder to climb and constantly took that extra call and constantly took someone else's on-call who couldn't make it. And really that extra call piece being a huge part of it. Because I know if you look back on all the times you exercised self-discipline, you wouldn't trade one of them for the comfort that you would have received for not exercising self-discipline. Like in no way was there ever a time when the office calls you and says, "Hey, the on-call guy's trapped. He's got a leaking water heater he's at, and he's got another one holding, and we got someone with water pouring through their kitchen ceiling, and she can't figure out how to shut the water off." And you go, "Yeah, sorry, I got the kids, or I just had my second beer. I know you don't want me to drive the company truck," versus just saying, I'm on my way. I'll go handle it. And the moment, yeah, it sucks. You're leaving the house. It's 9:30 at night. You weren't even on call. But if you look back on all the times that you manned up and went and ran that call, or, now it's, 90 degrees and humid, and you have a family without air conditioning tonight, and you run the call, you never look back on those moments and go, "I wish I had not run that call. I wish I had stayed home and watched a little more Netflix." It never happens. It's only in that quick snap of a finger moment that, you're whatever, the lazy fat guy on your shoulder is telling you to just call it quits and stay cozy, versus the animal on the other side telling you to get moving. Like, you're going to go get better. You're going to make yourself some money. You're going to make a friend for life in this client whose day you saved. The dispatcher's going to be happy. Your manager's going to be happy. And you're advancing in maybe a microscopic way that you can't even see. You're advancing your career. You're certainly advancing that muscle self-discipline. Like, Justin wasn't born with these biceps any more than he was born with self-discipline, right?
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
But every time you flexed it and you broke that muscle tissue down a little bit, ate a little protein and got some sleep that night, that muscle got bigger, that muscle got harder and ready to push more weight the next time. And I believe it's the exact same with self-discipline, because back when it was really easy for me to excuse my way out of going out of my way to help somebody, every time I shirked the duty, it got easier the next time to just go, "I'm good. I'm not doing it." But every time I pushed through and just said, "I'll do it," and you get that little dopamine reward, that little serotonin rush from, an extremely grateful client, or, having all those ribbons with those medals around your neck, or however it is that you get a victory, be it a CSR or what have you. Then that muscle gets strengthened, and it's easier to do what you did in the hospital, which was tell that voice to shut up, I assume, right?
Yeah. I didn't have a single, like the biggest thing it was telling me to do was go get something to eat, go, let it go, call it off, go get something, just go have a snack or some sort of treat. And, it wasn't looking like I was going to make it to the fight or anything, but I was like, if you quit now, then this is going to be the moment that it's over. But if you just keep calm, keep going through, what needs to be done, we'll see where we're at. But you don't need to be the reason that it's over. If you go cheat, on your meal or whatever, or call it off, then you're the reason that it's over. But you don't have to be, you know what I mean? Like if it's going to be over, it's going to be over. And if you can't make it, you can't make it. But
not choosing not to.
Right.
Yeah.
That doesn't need to be because of me and my decision. We'll see where we're at when we get there. And, and I felt great that day. Like, I'm not trying to use this as an excuse as to why I lost. Like, I felt great that day. I was ready to go. Fever was cleared up. I got a couple good training sessions in right before. I didn't have any more strength to build, any more technique to learn that week. So I didn't miss anything,
Yeah.
Just wasn't my day. But
again, like you said, you needed to experience that level of
absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad, like you said, like, I'm glad that I didn't, not go. I would definitely have regretted calling it off and eating the ice cream or whatever.
And thinking that you were probably going to win.
Right.
And go get that 10 grand.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's another funny thing that we do is we just convince ourselves of things, like if I hadn't gone, I'd be walking around saying like, yeah, I would have won.
Positive you were going to win.
Right. Yeah. I would have won if only, I didn't have this really good excuse.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it though, is, I don't want to talk about like right and wrong, but you need to be able to identify in your own, you need to know yourself. You need to be able to identify in your mind, when you're just coming up with an excuse. And, when you start paying attention to that, you realize that I realized that I'm sometimes manipulative, and I'm not proud of that. And by going through this whole process, I'm able to get that under control and not be this person that I'm not proud of being. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've been in trouble before. I've done, wrong things. And this process has allowed me to kind of evaluate myself really for the first time, honestly, and say like, these are the things that I need to stop doing. These are the things that are going to make me better. And that's really what this all is just more good decisions than bad decisions that accumulate to, world championship or whatever. It's one decision at a time, every decision that I make. If I'm walking through my house and there's a scrap of paper on the floor or something, I heard this quote from Benjamin Franklin. I think it was him. He said, if you can do something today, don't put it off till tomorrow. So when I walk past that piece of paper, I'm like, I could wait until later when I sweep the floor, because I don't sweep the floor at noon. I sweep the floor at 6 or whatever. Like, no, just pick it up. Deal with it now, and just more decisions like that.
Yeah. For us, that would be getting that freaking empty McDonald's cup out of the passenger side floor of your work van. just take it now. Throw it in the client's dumpster if you have to. That thing's going to get brothers and sisters and pile up. And then a client is going to come up to your passenger door and, hey, forgot one thing, and open that door. Now you got, looks like 6 people ate McDonald's in front of their house. Yeah, but it's good that you can see a culmination of all those good decisions become something great.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a fantastic way for you to find out the difference between, and I think it was C.S. Lewis who wrote about, I forget which book it was in, maybe Mere Christianity, but where he talked about if you're on a 10-mile walk, let's say, and I don't remember exact numbers he used, but you're trying to get to an exact location 10 miles away. Well, you only have to turn left 1 inch at mile 1 to not even be close to your destination. So we think these tiny little decisions don't matter all that much. And in the short term, they don't. But if you make that 1 inch turn to the left on mile 1 of a 10-mile walk, you're not even going to be in the vicinity of the place you wanted to end up. So
Yeah, exactly.
every one of those right decisions, correct choices you make leads you to where you want to end up, which for you was a 3-time world and 1-time pan.
Yeah. Yeah, 1 pan at Purple Belt. I've been to pans before. I think this was the first one that I won. Yeah.
What is pans?
North and South America. So it's a big one. It's a big tournament. I think there was over 5,000 people there this year.
Wow.
So 5,000 competitors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
it's a big one.
You compete at 215?
It's 208 wearing a gi, so it's really like 205 or so.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to weigh in with the gi on.
You're getting down to 205.
I was 200 in New York.
My gosh.
Yeah.
But
I'm
you're
217 right
6'5"?
now. So yeah, I'm 6'4". I was 200 when I was in New York last weekend, and then I always the 4th of July I had planned out for a while, so I had a pretty good time this weekend. I got the ice cream, I drank the beers, had fun. But now I'm 217.
Just like that, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Dude, I think I'm 217 and I'm 5'11". Yeah, getting down to 200 at your size, that's a feat.
Well, I mean, there is a slight difference between your two physiques, Brian. I'm just observing.
I'm way
here.
more muscular, is what you meant to say.
I'm not saying that with him and listening. No, absolutely not.
Oh, the midsection he just pointed to. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a little bit difference there.
I do have to question though. You said about being, it's not like he was born with his biceps. I mean, Mike Vavrick, there's a guy who was born with the biceps. He's currently operating with.
Throw
right
Mike
now.
under the bus.
Shout out to you, Mike.
That was nothing short of an attack. I know, Justin, you don't know who Mike is. He shares an office with me back there, our vice president of external operations, but that was nothing short of an attack.
There are those guys that are born with it.
He's not one of them.
Okay.
He was being sarcastic.
All right. Well, those guys do exist. I have come across them, and that there's something that happens when you grab a hold of somebody, like when you're doing jujitsu with somebody or whatever. Like when you lay your hands on them, you can feel, you understand pretty quickly.
Genetics.
Not
right?
genetic. It's not genetics, because I'm more afraid of a scrawny dude that's seen some things than a guy who's born with 20-inch biceps
Right.
and abs. When you grab a hold of somebody, you can kind of understand like how far they're willing to go, and
Just immediately.
yeah. And I like to think that I'm one of those guys that people tell me all the time at the gym. They're like, man, I felt like the only way to stop you was I was going to have to kill you. They said, people tell me that all the time. They say you just don't quit.
And you're like, well, you could also tap. That'll stop me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the rule. But when I encounter somebody, like that, I can tell this is gonna hurt. Even if I come out on top, this is gonna hurt. So that's just another, the guys who are born with it. Sometimes I don't want to say it's a disservice to them, but to get strong, to develop that type of strength, it's a rewarding process to push yourself so hard. Through my 20s, like I said, I lifted 5 days a week through my 20s at least. And I probably threw my back out 6-7 times where I couldn't even walk. How many people repeatedly push themselves to the point where they can't walk, and then as soon as they can walk, they get back up and they go back and do it again.
Yeah.
At least 6 times through my 20s. My back, I wouldn't even want to see what an x-ray, and my spine looks like it hurts. But it doesn't bother me at all. It's become a simple, I'm aware, right now as we sit here, I'm aware that there's a burning in the bottom of my lower back, but it doesn't stop me from doing anything. I'm going to leave here. I'm going to go push a 300-pound sled through the parking lot at the gym. I'm going to lift for a half an hour, do a little bit of yoga, and then train for the rest of the night with guys at the gym.
So you're planning on get there about 3.
Yeah.
And then what's today? Tuesday. So training starts at 6.
That's when class starts.
Class starts at 6.
So I'll push the sled what I'll do is I'll push the sled, and then in between a round of pushing it, I'll swing a sledgehammer 20 times, and then I'll pull it. So I'll push it through the parking lot. I'll go swing the sledgehammer at the tire, and then I'll pull it back through the parking lot, and then I'll swing the sledgehammer, and then I'll push it back through the parking lot. And I'll just do that for an hour. And then I'll lift some weights for about a half an hour, 45 minutes. And then at 5 o'clock, either some guys will come in and they'll want to get some rounds in before practice. And if they don't, then I'll just do some yoga until class starts at 6, then drill from 6 to 7, and then from 7 to 8, live rounds.
Open mat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nate just emailed me from across the table while we were talking, asked if he could come with you to do your whole routine this evening.
Absolutely.
We'll get a hold of your wife and kids, Nate. We'll take care of that. Don't worry about
let's go.
Listen, if there was a way that I was going to be dying young, that's probably at the top of the list right there.
Yeah, so it's 5 hours.
Dude, I was swinging
5 hours of.
I was swinging an axe and a digging iron yesterday, doing some digging at my house, and I feel awful today. So
Yeah.
I
get talked about, like, I didn't start lifting. I mean, I probably lifted weights 3 times in my life until I was 32 in rehab, which was 10 years ago now. Actually graduated 10 years ago this month. And I get made fun of a lot because I get hurt all the time. And I do get hurt all the time. Like, there's a shoulder, there's a knee, a foot, an elbow, like tendonitis. And I always seem to be messing myself up. And I know part of it is because my joints and tendons never really got exposure to this stuff the first 31 years of life. But the other part of it is, I work out with people all the time. And I am, like, this is really the guy I'm working out with now. Paul is the first person I've seen that will go the distance with me, go rep for rep, which is like, when I want to put those weights down, I do a 10 countdown now, where I'm going to get 10 more reps of whatever it is. And I know exactly what you're talking about with that. The people who came upon it naturally almost being a disservice to them.
Right.
Because those guys that I've worked out with that were like that are not willing to go those extra. And maybe it's just 3 reps or 4 reps or 1 rep or whatever it is. But when they're done, they're done. And when I'm done, I'm like, all right, now help me get it up again, and now push it down so I don't, so I get some resistance. Now it's time to get the negatives, and just like if there's any muscle fiber left in my body when I leave that gym in the morning and head here, I feel like it's a wasted day.
That mentality transfers to everything. Some of the mistakes I've made, I've gotten in trouble because I didn't know when to quit. That's unfortunate, but
that's how I ended up in rehab, buddy.
Yeah, that's how it goes. But when you're in the gym and you don't know when to quit, you might get bumped up along the way. But that's really how progress is done.
Yeah.
When you're doing jiu-jitsu and you take it to that level, you might get hurt, but you might win a world championship too. So it transfers across. I think there's certain types of people that want to push things way beyond, the standard. And it's dangerous for that person because you don't know when to quit, but it's also what makes you successful.
Yeah, it did. And it translated here for sure. And I wasn't like that before, even before that point, really. I would say I was always looking to be comfortable, always looking to scale it back a little, just chill out. But something about being in rehab while my wife, and at that time we had 2 kids, were scratching to make ends meet. And I needed to get out of there with a fire lit under me and start making moves pretty ferociously, which I've, for the most part, done ever since. But then that just started to become who I was. So we got all this massive debt paid off, bought a home within a year and a half of within about a year and a half of graduating, which ended up being our first house. We were in Vegas before that, never bought, because that's when all the crazy real estate or the market crash was happening. So we were on the sidelines waiting to buy and just never took the opportunity, fortunately, because now we would have had a foreclosure on our record as well. But yeah, got out, hit it hard there. stayed hitting it hard in the gym. Got hurt a couple times where I had to take some significant time off, but more or less over the decade, just been in nonstop. And now looking to apply it in other places. This podcast being one of them, for sure. I might get a little bit of heat for the fact that I put too much time and energy into something that, let's be honest, does not provide a paycheck for either one of us, which is always strange to nobody more than my wife. Just go, oh, you're back promoting that on Facebook while we're chilling here. The podcast that does not pay you a dime, but it pays in so many other ways because we chit chat at the gym for 2-3 minutes at a time, but we were never going to sit down for an hour uninterrupted and just have a conversation about life. More than likely, I mean, when I'm there, I have at least 2 kids with me, if not 4, so I'm pretty distracted. And then the people that we get to hang out with and meet and chit chat with have been, I would say, life-changing. I mean, I know that I'm going to get a ton of messages on Facebook Messenger and other places that this episode and your story are going to do so much for people. And none more than Nate and myself. I look to Nate's waistline to be at least 4 inches smaller next time you're here.
Wow. Okay. Hey, what are you doing in 2027? This is pretty open.
I'll be pushing the sled and swinging the hammer.
So there it is.
Have all these belts hung up.
Well, Justin, one thing I wanted to ask you, since you have engaged in so much competition and at extremely high levels, when you go out, do you find it more challenging, more motivating to compete against the other person on the mat or against yourself? Like, who are you trying to beat? I mean, I know physically in terms of like the tournament and when the round is over, whose hand gets raised, you're competing against another person. But is it a motivation inside of you that like, I don't want to lose. I don't want to lose to myself. I don't want to make those excuses. Or are you determined to beat somebody else?
It's both. It's definitely, I remember one time my wife came to one of my tournaments and it was one of these submission only ones, another one that went 45 minutes. They don't do many of those anymore.
45. I remember how I was telling you, Nate. I was telling Nate on the way here, like we had lunch right before this, we met up here for this episode. I was telling Nate, I said, you can't, like you just ran, 6 miles this weekend?
No, it's just 5.
5 miles this weekend. And I was saying, like, that's work. And if you can put together 5 miles, you got to be in the upper 5% of humanity, just being able to run straight 5 miles.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate that.
I'm sure you jogged it, but we'll call it right. So,
jerk.
Just that's kind of a feat. And I was saying, you got to be in some decent shape for that. And, I spend an hour and a half in the gym with very little rest time every morning. So, like, I do that morning, lifted. First day at Jujitsu, Justin was my sparring partner. What do you call it?
Yeah.
Sparring partner.
Yeah.
So we train for that hour, and then we have a half hour of open mat. And, dude, I rolled with him for the first 5-minute round, and then my 14-year-old, 140-pound son for 5 minutes after that. He just did whatever. Like, I had nothing left in the tank. And so, like, what jiu-jitsu is like the muscles that you don't really have the opportunity to train normally are getting activated in a really hard way for like what might be 40 seconds, which is just insane. Think about just doing a bench press move for a 40-second clip that you never get time off of tension. And then he just said he did it for 45 minutes. This is just
unreal.
It makes no sense.
Well, the biggest thing, like once you take your, your initial beatings that first year, because that's just the way. That's the barrier that you got to get past. But once you do that, you learn, like, there's critical mistakes that you can't make, and everything else you can figure out how to handle. But there's certain things that you just can't allow to happen, and there's not that many things that fall into that category. So once you're familiar with everything, so even in that 45-minute match, there's places I can go to recover for a couple minutes or whatever I need to do. But I remember being 45 minutes into this one, and this isn't the one where my heel got hooked and popped, but my wife was there. I'll never forget the thought that ran through my mind was, you're not going to lose in front of your wife. You're not losing in front of your wife. You know, we had plans. We were going to go out later that night, have a good time. Like, I wasn't going to let that get ruined by, you know, me losing. We were going to go out because I won today. And then I grabbed a hold of the guy's arm and finished it, you know, 45 minutes in. And that was purely just on thinking about her, knowing that she was there. If she wasn't there, you know, maybe I wouldn't have had the strength to finish it. I don't know. But then there's, at Pans, my most recent one at Pans, there's a guy I went up against. I beat him once. He beat me once. We both got promoted to purple belt at the same time. He got third at Worlds. I got first at Worlds last year. I ran into him in the first round, and he was up on points. He was up on points, and he was stopping me from, you know, doing the things that I like to do. There's a couple things that I typically like to do more than others. So there's like a game plan that I have, and he was shutting it down, and he was beating me on points, and I just kept firing, just kept going. At that point, it's this, I don't know how to describe it. I'm not thinking about anything. I'm not thinking about anything except for just don't stop until somebody makes you stop. Just to set the tone, set your mindset like that. You know what I mean? It's at that point, it's beyond motivation. It's not something where I'm motivated to win. It's something where we're going now and we're not going to stop. You know what I mean? Like, that's it. The switch is on, and I'm going to wait until somebody flips it off. Like the referee says stop or it's over or whatever. But it's not, it's beyond motivation. I don't know
how did you develop that?
You know, this is something that I was thinking about. Like on my long runs, I like to try and record some of the thoughts, some of the ideas that I have. And you know how they say that there's like a fine line between, you know, genius and insanity?
Sure.
Well, that's not what I'm talking about. But there's another fine line. You know, I think there's a lot of these fine lines. And another one is perseverance and desperation. And it's a fine line between perseverance and desperation, but I almost feel desperate to win. I can't imagine not winning. You know what I mean? The best feeling, my picture on the Instagram, the reason I like my profile picture on Instagram, it really captured a moment that I'm proud to have had. But it was me winning the No-Gi World Championship, and I'll never forget the moment. Like when they raised my hand, I felt the biggest relief in the world because I was there to win, and when I didn't have to worry anymore about not winning, I felt this relief come over me. Like in the picture, you can almost see it. You can almost sense it. It's like almost like one of those sort of things where you can feel this, you know, the emotion of just absolute relief. And I think that's what it is. Like that's when that switch goes on, it's just this overwhelming pressure to not quit until you know they stop me. So I don't know how I developed that, but I'm familiar with it.
Well, there is the desperation tends to be more motivating than the inspiration. Like, you know, if you even just look at the Sweet Science, you rarely see a boxer that came from money. You know, he just lived the high life. Pops gave him everything, and he's tough enough to go win world championships. It just doesn't happen because, I mean, even Mike Tyson was on the Rogan podcast talking about his son told him he wants to be a boxer, and he just laughed at him. He's like, you don't have the killer instinct. Your life is too good. Yeah. So that desperation is real. It's, you know, desperation for, say, me. I don't want my kids to move to Detroit and grow up where I grew up. So I'm nonstop desperate for the next step, rung of the ladder, financial gain. growth or win for our team, I'm obsessed with it. I eat, breathe, and sleep this, this team here and where we're going, probably largely out of the fact that I like where my kids are and I don't want to have to, move them to what I grew up in.
There is a flip side to that, the desperation, perseverance dynamic. I think it becomes a problem. Like desperation, that has a negative, sense to it. I think it becomes a problem when you need to make a line. Like for me, it would be desperation if like I wasn't spending time with my kids, if I wasn't taking care of my wife, things like that. Like now I've crossed the line. Now this is desperation. And so like, you have to be aware of that, and you have to set, whether it's your work or whatever you're doing, you have to like set boundaries. Mm-hmm. So, every night after practice, I get back home, and I make sure like I sit down with my kids, we watch some cartoons, I make some popcorn on the stove, and we watch cartoons, even towards 20 minutes, but like I spend time with them, and I'm not there, I'm not sitting there on my phone. I'm not, doing any other thing. It's purely just me and my kids watching cartoons together, laughing, having a good time. And the other day I had the thought, I was like, you guys are actually pretty cool to hang out with, and that was fun. That's a good feeling.
A great discovery.
Yeah.
When you're hanging out with your kid and go like, I would hang out with you if you weren't my kid.
Right. Yeah.
Assuming we were the same age, of course.
Right. But that's what you have to do though, is because when you become desperate for something, that's when you start making mistakes, start, doing things that you wouldn't be proud to do.
Yeah. Giving too much in one area and lacking in the others.
Right.
Which are the most important ones, right? Like if I'm saying I'm doing all this for my kids' sake, then they're clearly the most important thing. But then for me, it's easy to focus only on the thing that is keeping us away from poverty and, growing up how I did. It becomes an obsession, or it can become an obsession, and too much focus and it's the right area, but it's only right if it's just the right amount of focus. If it's taken away from other areas of your life, then it becomes the wrong area.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Justin, this has been good stuff today, and I think there's a lot of takeaways from our conversation that can apply to really anybody, but for sure the home services industry, as there's a lot of adversity, there's a lot of like trying to get better, a lot of excuses to be made, all those things. I mean, it's just great life advice. And before we wrap up here, like if people are just practically interested in learning more about you or about Gracie 717 or just Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in general, where's a good place for them to go?
You can check it out on social media, but the best thing to do is to come into the gym. You can check me out. I'm on Instagram at Busted Misfit. So check that out, but don't waste your time. Just come into the gym. That's it. Come in there and find out. You'll learn more about yourself. You'll learn, jiu-jitsu. That's it.
Yeah.
And we have listeners from across the country. I mean, is there a good way?
Still come into Lancaster.
Yeah, right. Get a
I was
plane
going to say,
ticket,
okay,
maybe a bus
yes.
if you have to.
If they don't have a bus option and maybe they're looking to have a gym closer to home, what's like a good way to pick a gym?
The gym's kind of, if the gym, like any other business, if it's been around for a little while, has a good reputation, it's probably not a bad place to start. Like even the gym, like the Harrisburg gym that kicked me out, I still recommend that gym to people in Harrisburg that don't want to make the trip down to Lancaster. I drive down here an hour every day to train, and I understand that that's, not everybody's going to do that. And I tell them, the guys in Harrisburg, they're a good gym. They have plenty of members. The coaches, everyone's nice. They'll take care of you. They are knowledgeable about jiu-jitsu. But if you're looking for a place to really learn about yourself and put yourself to the test and compete and be around, a bunch of guys that are not going to take it easy on you, then you come to Lancaster. But if you want to learn jiu-jitsu and get into that world, just like any other business, go to the ones that have like a time-tested, proven reputation, and you'll be fine.
Okay. Speaking of time-tested, proven reputation, that's kind of where I wanted to end today. So you mentioned, over the course of your life, you had some difficulties as a child, and then in middle school you started to experience some of that success, and then in high school you kind of made some probably less than profitable choices and started to the partying thing, and then we kind of like jumped to LA, and then we jumped through a whole bunch of other things. So I'm guessing there's been a fair amount of choices that you've made in your life that have gotten you to this place, right? That's inevitable. Some good, some bad. As you look back upon the past 33 years and you like kind of start to understand what all that has meant and everything, we have a fair amount of listeners who are either considering the trades, they're considering getting out of the trades, they're considering, man, I've been doing the same thing for 20 years now, right? They're weighing decisions in their life, both good and bad, that can have different outcomes. As you look over the past of your years and your decisions, what have been the decisions that you have regretted versus the ones that have been the most profitable for you? And how can you encourage our listeners today who are weighing some of those serious and difficult things in their own lives?
Well, on decisions, mistakes, all of that, this is another, running thought that I had the other day, but I don't want to say that I regret. The biggest regret about the mistakes I've made isn't making those mistakes. It's that I risked so little, or it's that I risked so much to gain so little. So, when I, get in a DUI, that's a big risk, and I paid for it. And the best thing that I could have hoped to gain from that night of drinking was not worth it.
Or at least saving the Uber money.
Right. Well, they didn't have Uber back then. So.
That was just a while ago.
Yeah.
Good. That's good to know.
Yeah. But that definitely changed the dynamic.
It wasn't on the way here. All right, cool.
But it's, if you're gonna take a risk, just be aware of the benefits that you can take from it, and you've got to consider, what means more to you. That's pretty much it. You've got to just consider, like, what's the best case scenario here? What do you have to gain from this? And if you're willing to lose everything in the process of gaining that.
And you've stuck to some version of hand-to-hand combat for most of your life, right? You've either been wrestling, kickboxing, sparring, something.
Yeah, I got in kindergarten. I liked a girl on the playground, and she already had a kindergarten boyfriend, and
got her in a triangle.
Him and his friends came over to me, and they surrounded me and started, pushing me around and stuff. And so I grabbed the one kid by the hair and threw him into a brick wall and broke his nose. His parents moved him out of the school district. And instantly I was labeled, a dangerous kid. And this went on for a while. And I told the one teacher, I'll never forget, I said, she gave me a piece of candy earlier in the day for getting a good score on a math test or whatever. And I was like, look, I'm going to give you this piece of candy. All I ask is that when these kids surround me and start fighting me, if you're not going to stop it then, at least continue not stopping it when I fight them back. And so yeah, I've been doing this for a while.
That was quite a thought for a kindergartner to have, I got to say.
Yeah.
Well, what I wanted to go with that question is more along the lines like, how do you teach commitment, right? Because we all have bad days. We all have the days where we say, I'm done here. I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
We all have the days that we say, like, there's got to be something else.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, man. Even, every time you have an idea come up in your head where you're like, you know what, screw this. It's too hard. I'm just going to go to the bar and drink beer the rest of the day. Screw it. This has been a tough day or whatever. Like, no, like, don't do that. It's not too hard. Now, sometimes you should go drink beers all day. Like I did this weekend on the 4th of July. I drank beer. I drank for 12 hours on the 4th of July. But that wasn't because, that was planned out. It was appropriate. Other than that, there's nothing that is going to happen to me today that is going to cause me to just blow off, my plans and my workout and just say, screw it. And, go to the bar, go to the ice cream place or whatever. That's not an option. And that's how you have to that's what you need to tell yourself. When the wrong idea, when the temptation comes up, just say, just tell yourself no. Obviously this is not the right thing to do. You got to just ask yourself, is this going to make anything better? Right. Is this the right thing to do? Is this going to help me in any way? And the answer.
Right. And I think commitment is a foundational point to any successful person. I mean, you don't get places without first committing to either the task at hand, the long-term play, the discipline that comes with it. It's all commitment. It has to be. You don't get to be a 3-time world champion by some days being committed.
Exactly.
Right. And you don't get to be a world-class technician, plumber, electrician by sometimes being committed either. It's a decision.
But you do need to give yourself, breaks here and there. You should have rest. You should have a good time. Absolutely. But yeah, when you have a plan, that's it. You need to trust. You need to come up with a plan that you trust, because when you start screwing off and not doing what you're supposed to be doing and deviating from the plan, I think it's because you don't trust the plan. You don't have confidence in the plan. So when you don't trust it, that's when everything starts falling apart. And some plans shouldn't be trusted. Look at in the diet world and all that stuff. There's lots of wrong, types of thinking in that world. If you commit to a purely vegan diet,
gross first off.
What?
Gross first off.
Right. But if you 100% commit yourself to a vegan diet or whatever, that's not going to go great for you. It's going to lead to problems down the road. You're not going to achieve, what most of us would like to achieve. So you need to have a plan that's, backed up by some sort of, I don't want to say science, but some sort of track record.
Right. The evidence.
Right.
Yeah. And that's something that, we want our technicians to believe in is, the training that we offer on this podcast or many other resources that are equally as valuable, that these have proven track records. It's not like we're just putting this stuff out there and saying hey, this might work. Give this a shot. I mean, to some degree, yes, everybody has their own ways of doing things. If it's not Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, maybe it's boxing. If it's not boxing, maybe it's running. If it's not running, maybe it's some other sport or some other activity. Everybody has their own preferences, but whatever it is, find the something, find the evidence, find the things that are driving you towards being a better version of yourself, towards greatness, and pursue them and commit to them and the plan that goes with it. Anybody who knows indecision knows that it kills. I mean, indecision costs money, it costs time, it costs experience, because you get, I'll try this, then I'll try this, then I'll try this. And eventually, 10, 15 years later, you're like, I haven't really committed to much of anything. I've had a lot of different false starts. But here I am, and I'm still not sure what I want to do. And I feel for people who are in their 30s and they're trying to figure out what they want to do in their life.
That itself, though, figuring out what you want to do. I mean, there's plenty of good plans out there. There's plenty of good examples of people who've made themselves successful doing this thing or that thing or whatever. But figuring out what you want to do, that is pretty much the hardest part, I think. Once you know what you want, that's the thing. Mankind is great at coming up with plans and developing techniques and tactics, and it's figuring out what you want in the first place. Okay, so I have this little idea. Do you have a minute?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Just anytime the lottery gets really high, I have this fun thought, okay, if I won, this is what I would do. And so if I won one of those big lotteries, $1 billion or whatever, mm-hmm. What I'd like to do is build a brewery on the moon.
Okay.
So the way that I would do that is I would buy have you seen the 3D printed housing stuff yet? Where
I've seen some of that, yeah.
it's basically like a fire truck that they, pull up to a foundation that they've laid.
Yeah.
And the boom arm sticks out. It 3D prints, a building. And there you have it. You just need a guy to sit there and monitor it, but it pretty much, you can build whatever structure you need. So I'd send one of them up to the moon and then build a brewery, start brewing beer. Who wouldn't want beer brewed on the moon? And you could probably sell them for $25 a can. But really, it's not about the money. It's about the building a brewery on the moon. Now, this is a fun idea, and I even have an idea of how it could be done. Now, if this was my life's purpose, if I thought this is why, I was put on this earth, is to do this, I could, devote my life to it. I'd find a job with plenty of overtime opportunities, just make as much money as I can and, commit, work 80 hours a week, 100 hours a week, whatever. Do that for 5 years, save up enough money, buy an apartment building or something that makes me another level of money and just accumulate wealth, however I need to. And then I believe that if what I wanted to do was build this brewery on the moon, if that's what I committed to, I could develop a plan to accomplish it. Because Elon Musk has $200 billion or whatever. And if he wanted to do it, he could do it because he has enough money to do it. Right. I mean, he could probably pull it off. So that's just what I believe in the power of a good plan is. Nothing special about me. Just that's what the ability of, that's what having a good plan can achieve.
Yeah. And that's a great place to leave it, Justin, as we are constantly trying to encourage our people to have plans, to have something that they're working towards to being better. Right. And that's a big piece of it. Thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been good to hear from you and your journey and all the things that have come with it. I think you brought a lot of stuff to the table that we can take away and what'd you call them? Running thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I have a Instagram page for that too. It's called Sunrise Philosophy.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Check that out.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Well, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, we look forward to having you back on. I don't know.
Cool.
When you win your first purple belt championship and then brown belt and then celebrate the black belt together.
Absolutely.
Good stuff. Thanks so much, Justin.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, that's a wrap for this podcast. We hope that you enjoyed our time with Justin. It was good to hear from him and the thoughts that he had regarding just so many things, including competition, getting better, overcoming obstacles, avoiding the excuses, pursuing that plan that can get you somewhere, and all the things that go with it. If you are looking for a plan, this podcast is a great place to start, but it's going to take a lot more than that. Seek out a mentor. Seek out somebody who you can ask for guidance and provide insight into your life, to your plan. And of course, just begin trying it. Start out small. Don't try to plan out the next 10 years. Start off by planning out the next 10 minutes or 10 days or something smaller there, and put together a plan of action. Whether it's you trying to get better in your skills, whether it's you trying to get better as a family person, or any of the things in between, your finances. There's so many things where you can apply a plan and you can make that. And it is a competition because you're trying to not only best the things that are against you, all the problems and things, but you're trying to best the version of yourself that was yesterday so that you can become better. And that's where we're going to leave it for this podcast, as we always do. We challenge you to choose to wake up every single morning and waste no day.